The Xelvar Dominion was one of the most feared empires in the galaxy. For thousands of years, they had expanded their territory, conquering weaker species and forcing them into submission. Their warships were massive, their technology advanced, and their armies nearly unstoppable. No species had ever dared to challenge them. When they discovered Earth, they expected another easy victory. A Xelvar fleet, led by Admiral Vorkin, arrived near the outermost human colony, a small planet called Eos 3. The fleet consisted of heavily armed warships, each one capable of destroying entire cities in a single strike. From their perspective, humanity was nothing more than a primitive species with limited technology. The Xelvar had crushed civilizations far more advanced than Earth, so they believed this conquest would be effortless. Admiral Vorkin opened a transmission to the humans. His message was simple: kneel before the Xelvar Dominion or be destroyed. The response from the humans was calm but firm. The United Earth Defense Fleet, represented by Commander Ryan Carter, replied, "We do not seek war, but we will not surrender. Leave now, and there will be no conflict." The Xelvar officers laughed at this response. To them, this was an insult. No species had ever refused their demands and lived to tell the tale. Admiral Vorkin considered this a minor inconvenience, nothing more. He decided to make an example out of humanity. He ordered his fleet to fire upon Eos 3, targeting key infrastructure and defense stations. The attack was swift and brutal, but what happened next was unexpected. The humans fought back. Instead of crumbling in fear, the colony's defense systems activated immediately. Anti-ship railguns, surface-to-orbit missiles, and energy-based artillery fired upon the invading fleet with deadly precision. Xelvar warships, which had never faced such resistance from a primitive species, suffered heavy damage. The humans were not just defending. They were counterattacking with strategy and coordination. Within minutes, several Xelvar ships were crippled or destroyed. Their shields failed to withstand the constant barrage, and their communication systems were disrupted by advanced human electronic warfare. For the first time in his career, Admiral Vorkin felt uncertainty. How was this possible? Humanity was supposed to be weak, yet they were fighting like seasoned warriors. As the battle continued, human reinforcements arrived. A fleet of Earth-made warships equipped with high-speed maneuverability and adaptive AI combat systems. These ships did not fight like traditional fleets. They moved unpredictably, using fast attack formations and precise strikes to dismantle the larger Xelvar vessels. Every time that Xelvar attempted to regroup, the humans changed their tactics, overwhelming them with superior strategy. Realizing his fleet was on the verge of total destruction, Admiral Vorkin made a decision he had never made before. He ordered a retreat. The Xelvar ships jumped into hyperspace, fleeing back to the safety of their empire. As they left, one final message from the humans was transmitted. "We warned you. Do not return." For the first time in history, the Xelvar Dominion had been forced to retreat from a species they had underestimated. Admiral Vorkin sat in silence, his pride shattered. He knew the Emperor would not accept this failure lightly. But more than that, he realized something even more terrifying. Humanity was not weak. They were dangerous. And that Xelvar had just made the worst mistake of their existence. Admiral Vorkin's fleet returned to the Xelvar Dominion in disgrace. The defeat at Eos 3 was a humiliation the Empire had never experienced before. The Emperor was furious. No species had ever dared to resist the Dominion. And now, a so-called primitive species had not only defied them, but also forced them into retreat. Vorkin stood before the High Council, trying to explain what had happened. "The humans are not what we expected," he admitted. "They fight with intelligence, strategy, and precision. Their weapons are powerful, their tactics unpredictable. We must be careful." The Emperor's eyes burned with anger. "Careful?" he repeated. "We do not fear weak creatures. We crush them." The Xelvar High Command decided there would be no negotiations, no mercy. They would send a full-scale invasion fleet to wipe humanity from existence. Thousands of warships, the mightiest force that Selvar had ever deployed, were assembled. The mission was clear: destroy Earth's defenses, enslave its people, and make an example of them. But humanity was not waiting to be attacked. On Earth, preparations had already begun. The United Earth Defense Fleet, UEDF, knew that Selvar would return with greater force. Every nation on Earth united under a single command, pooling resources, technology, and military expertise. Humanity had always been a species of war and survival. For centuries, they had fought wars on their own planet. They had developed powerful weapons, advanced tactics, and battle strategies designed to outthink any enemy. Now, all of that experience was aimed at a single target: the Selvar Dominion. Fleet Admiral James Holloway stood before his officers in Earth's military command center. His voice was calm but firm. The Selvar believe they are unstoppable. They see us as nothing more than an easy conquest. But today, we show them the truth. He looked around at his commanders, men and women who had spent their entire lives preparing for battles. They came to our colony and expected us to surrender. Instead, we sent them running. Now they are bringing their full strength, and we will show them what happens when they underestimate humanity. The room erupted in cheers. Earth's engineers worked day and night, modifying warships to be faster, more agile, and deadlier. Cyber warfare teams developed advanced hacking programs capable of disrupting enemy communications and weapon systems. Soldiers trained for both space and planetary combat, preparing for any scenario. Humanity had no intention of just defending themselves. They would take the fight to the Selvar. The Selvar invasion fleet arrived in human space weeks later. The massive armada moved toward Eos 3, expecting to find terrified humans. Instead, they found empty space. No warships, no defenses, nothing. Admiral Jorlak, the commander of the invasion force, was confused. "Where are they?" he muttered. Then, without warning, the first human attack began. From the darkness of space, hidden behind asteroid fields and cloaked stations, human warships launched a devastating ambush. Swarms of high-speed fighters, equipped with AI-assisted targeting systems, darted between Selvar ships, firing precise shots at weak points in their armor. Selvar warships tried to regroup, but suddenly their systems failed. Their communications went silent, their weapons refused to fire, and their shields flickered uncontrollably. Human hackers had infiltrated their systems, turning their own technology against them. The Selvar panicked. They had never faced an enemy that fought like this. Humanity didn't just attack with brute force. They used intelligence, strategy, and deception. Admiral Jorlak ordered his ships to retreat, but then, the second wave of the human attack arrived. Massive railgun platforms hidden on nearby moons fired hypervelocity projectiles, tearing through Selvar capital ships as if they were made of paper. Orbital defense cannons, disguised as space debris, activated and rained destruction upon the fleet. One by one, Selvar warships exploded, their crews unable to react fast enough. The mighty invasion fleet was reduced to burning wreckage in less than an hour. Jorlak, realizing he was about to die, sent a desperate message back to the Selvar homeworld. His final words were filled with fear. "Do not underestimate them. The humans are more dangerous than we ever imagined. We should have listened." But by then, it was too late. The Selvar had declared war on humanity. Now humanity was ready to finish it. The news of the second defeat shook the Selvar Dominion to its core. The mighty invasion fleet, expected to wipe out humanity in a single strike, had been destroyed in less than an hour. The Emperor was outraged. No species had ever humiliated the Selvar like this before. Inside the grand war chamber of the Imperial Palace, the High Council gathered to discuss their next move. The room was filled with tension as Admiral Relvok, one of the most ruthless commanders in the Empire, stepped forward. His voice was cold and firm. "We have underestimated these humans," he admitted, but they are still nothing compared to the full might of the Xelvar Dominion. I propose total war. We will not send another fleet to scare them. We will send an armada large enough to crush them in one decisive strike." The Emperor nodded. "I want their planet in flames. No more warnings. No more mistakes." Within days, the largest Xelvar fleet ever assembled prepared for war. Thousands of warships, equipped with advanced weapons and reinforced armor, gathered at the Empire's staging grounds. This time, there would be no retreat. The Xelvar would destroy humanity completely. On Earth, the response was clear. Humanity had won 2 battles, but they knew the war was far from over. The Xelvar were coming back, and this time, they would bring their full strength. Every military base, research facility, and space station across the solar system went into full war production. Fleet Admiral James Holloway addressed his officers from Earth's command center. His face was calm, but his words carried the weight of the coming storm. The Xelvar will return, and when they do, they will come with everything they have. We will not wait for them to attack us. We will take the fight to them. This is our chance to show them what humanity is truly capable of. Earth's scientists and engineers worked around the clock to improve their fleet. New warships, faster and more powerful than before, were built in record time. Cyber warfare teams developed even more advanced hacking systems, designed to disable enemy ships before they could fire a single shot. Every soldier, pilot, and commander was trained for one purpose: victory. For the first time in history, all of humanity stood united, not as separate nations, but as one species. They were no longer fighting for survival. They were fighting for dominance. The battle began at the edge of human space. The Xelvar Armada arrived in full force, expecting to overwhelm the humans with sheer numbers. Thousands of warships, led by Admiral Ralvok himself, advanced toward Earth's colonies. But something was wrong. The humans were nowhere to be seen. Ralvok narrowed his eyes. "Where are they hiding?" he growled. Then, without warning, the first human attack struck. From behind asteroids, moons, and hidden stations, human warships emerged in perfect formation. They didn't charge blindly into battle like the Xelvar expected. Instead, they attacked with precision, targeting command ships, supply carriers, and key communication hubs. Within minutes, the Xelvar fleet was thrown into chaos. Their lines broke as human ships moved unpredictably, weaving between enemy fire and striking weak points with deadly accuracy. Ralvok clenched his fists. Adapt, regroup, crush them. But it was already too late. The humans had learned everything about Xelvar tactics, but the Xelvar knew almost nothing about human strategy. They expected brute force, not intelligence. They expected fear, not resilience. Then, the real nightmare began. Xelvar warships suddenly lost control. Their systems shut down, weapons refused to fire, engines failed. Human cyber warfare teams had infiltrated their networks, taking control of entire ships from light years away. Some Xelvar crews even found their own weapons turning against them. Panic spread through the fleet. Xelvar officers screamed for orders, but their admirals were already dead. Their flagship, the Dominator, exploded in a chain reaction of sabotaged reactors. Ralvok, watching his armada fall apart, finally understood the truth. Humanity was not a weak species struggling for survival. They were predators, and the Xelvar were their prey. Realizing his defeat, Ralvok ordered a retreat, but only a handful of ships managed to escape. The once mighty fleet was nothing more than burning wreckage floating in space. Back on Earth, victory was met with silence. There were no celebrations, no cheers, only the realization that this war was far from over. Humanity had proven its strength, but now they had something even more dangerous than an enemy. They had the full attention of the galaxy. And soon, every empire, every faction, and every power in the stars would know one undeniable truth. Humanity was not to be challenged. The Xelvar Dominion had never known fear. For thousands of years, They had ruled the galaxy with absolute confidence, believing themselves to be the strongest force in existence. Every species they had encountered had either submitted or been wiped out. But now, everything had changed. Their greatest fleet had been destroyed. Their admirals had fallen. The humans, once dismissed as weak and primitive, had shattered the Empire's illusion of invincibility. On the Selvar homeworld, Emperor Caleris stood in silence, staring at the reports before him. The battle records were clear. The humans had outmaneuvered, outgunned, and outthought his forces at every turn. Even their most advanced warships had fallen to human strategy. Their cyber defenses had been rendered useless. Their armies had been crushed before they even had a chance to fight. It was a disaster unlike anything the Empire had ever faced. The High Council stood before him, their voices filled with panic and uncertainty. The humans have proven to be a greater threat than we imagined, one advisor admitted. We must negotiate for peace, another suggested hesitantly. Peace, Caleris growled. His claws dug into the stone table before him. You would have us kneel before these humans. Your Majesty, we have lost 2 entire fleets. Our forces are in disarray. If we continue this war, we may lose everything. The room fell silent. Caleris clenched his fists. He had ruled for over a century. He had never lost a war. He had never known defeat. But now his empire stood on the brink of collapse. He refused to accept it. If the humans wish to challenge us, then we will show them our true strength, he declared. We will not retreat. We will not surrender. We will unleash the full power of the Dominion. His advisors exchanged uneasy glances. They knew the truth, even if the Emperor refused to see it, that Selvar Dominion was no longer the unshakable force it had once been, and the cracks were starting to show. Meanwhile, in human space, Earth's leaders knew that the war was not over. Victory in battle did not mean the enemy would give up. That Selvar still had millions of soldiers, thousands of warships, and vast resources spread across the galaxy. If humanity wanted to win, they had to strike at the heart of the Empire itself. Fleet Admiral James Holloway gathered his top commanders in Earth's military headquarters. A massive holographic map of the Selvar Dominion floated before them. Their fleets are weakened, but they are still dangerous, Holloway explained. We need to hit them where it hurts. Commander Ryan Carter studied the map carefully. Their supply lines are stretched thin. If we target their trade routes and resource planets, we can cut off their ability to wage war. Agreed, Holloway nodded. But we must do more than that. We need to break their will to fight. That Selvar believe they are invincible. We must shatter that belief. The plan was set. Humanity would not simply defend its territory. It would take the fight directly into Selvar space. Within days, human strike teams launched coordinated attacks on key Selvar supply stations. Using stealth ships and cyber warfare, they infiltrated and disabled major refueling outposts, leaving entire fleets stranded in deep space. Resource planets were raided, their production facilities crippled beyond repair. At the same time, humanity's allies, former Selvar slaves and oppressed species, began to rise up. Seeing that the Selvar were not invincible, they launched their own rebellions across the Empire. Revolts erupted on occupied worlds. Garrisons were overrun. Military factories were sabotaged from within. The Selvar Dominion, once a symbol of absolute power, was now crumbling from the inside. On the Selvar homeworld, chaos spread like wildfire. The Emperor's attempts to keep order were failing. His people were losing faith. His own military commanders whispered of defeat behind his back. Your Majesty, an aide rushed into the throne room, his face pale with fear. There are riots in the capital. The citizens are demanding an end to the war. They say we cannot defeat the humans. Caleris' hands trembled with rage. Cowards. Fools. We are the Selvar Dominion. We do not surrender. But deep down, even he knew the truth. The war was no longer about victory. It was about survival. For the first time in history, The Selvar were the ones who were afraid, and humanity was not finished yet. The war had shifted. The Selvar dominion, once feared across the galaxy, was now on the defensive. Their fleets were scattered, their supply lines cut, and their people losing faith. But humanity had no intention of stopping. After decades of being seen as weak, after watching empires treat them as insignificant, the humans had finally proven their strength. Now they had only one goal: to end the war on their own terms. The final push begins. Fleet Admiral James Holloway stood on the bridge of the UEDF Titan, the most advanced warship ever built by human hands. Outside the viewport, thousands of human ships formed up in battle formation. From small, fast-moving corvettes to massive dreadnoughts, this was the greatest fleet humanity had ever assembled. He turned to his officers. "We have broken their fleets. We have shattered their empire's stability. Now we strike at their heart." The mission was clear. Earth's forces would launch an all-out invasion of the Selvar homeworld. The strategy had been carefully planned. Human forces would first secure the outer defenses of the Selvar capital system, taking down any remaining fleets and orbital stations. Then ground troops would land on the Selvar homeworld itself, targeting key command centers and forcing the Emperor to surrender. This was no longer just a war. It was a statement. The battle for Selvar space. When the human fleet arrived in Selvar space, they were met with what remained of the Empire's defenses. The Selvar had gathered every last warship, every remaining soldier, in a desperate attempt to stop humanity's advance. Admiral Vorkin, one of the few surviving Selvar commanders, glared at the incoming human fleet. His forces were outnumbered, outgunned, and demoralized. But he refused to retreat. "This is our last stand," he declared, "for the Empire." The battle began with a thunderous clash. Selvar warships surged forward, firing with everything they had. Plasma cannons burned through space, missiles locked onto human ships, and defensive stations unleashed devastating barrages. But humanity had evolved. Instead of fighting head-on, human warships moved like hunters, striking weak points, disabling engines, and cutting off enemy formations. Their eye-assisted targeting systems made every shot count. Their cyber warfare teams once again disrupted enemy communications and shields. It was not just a battle of firepower. It was a battle of strategy. One by one, Selvar warships fell. Their defensive stations were destroyed. Their fleets were reduced to burning wreckage. And as the last Selvar warship exploded in the darkness of space, humanity's forces moved forward unhindered. The path to the Selvar homeworld was open. The invasion of Selvar Prime. Selvar Prime, the Empire's mighty capital world, had never been touched by war. For thousands of years, it had stood as a symbol of power and dominance. Now, for the first time, enemy warships filled its skies. Human troop transports descended like falling stars, carrying elite soldiers ready for battle. Fighter squadrons patrolled the atmosphere, ensuring no enemy ships could escape. The Selvar's planetary defenses tried to resist, but they were too outdated, too weak against humanity's advanced weaponry. The Selvar army fought desperately in the streets of their cities, but they were not prepared for the precision and discipline of human soldiers. The battle lasted hours, but the result was never in doubt. Humanity had won. The Emperor's last gamble. Deep within the imperial palace, Emperor Caleris sat on his throne, his hands shaking. The sounds of battle echoed through the halls as human forces pushed deeper into the city. He had always believed that Selvar were superior. He had always believed his empire would last forever. Now his people were surrendering. His armies were broken. His fleets were gone. A loud explosion shook the palace. Moments later, the doors burst open, and human soldiers entered, their weapons ready. The lone figure stepped forward. Fleet Admiral James Holloway. He looked at the defeated emperor, his expression calm but firm. "Your empire is finished. Surrender, and we will spare your people." Caleris stared at the human leader, his pride fighting against reality. But in the end, there was no choice. He lowered his head. The war was over. A new era begins. News of the Selvar's surrender spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The once mighty empire had fallen, and humanity had risen as a dominant force. On Earth, people celebrated. The war had cost countless lives, but it had also united humanity like never before. They were no longer just a species struggling to survive. They were warriors. They were conquerors. And now, the galaxy would never forget the name of humanity. The war was over. The Selvar dominion had fallen. But victory did not bring celebration, at least not for the soldiers standing in the ruins of the once great Selvar capital. Humanity had proven its strength, but now they faced an even greater challenge. What happens after the war? A broken empire. Fleet Admiral James Holloway stood on the balcony of the former Imperial Palace, looking down at the city of Selvar Prime. Smoke still rose from the streets where the final battles had taken place. Selvar citizens moved through the ruins in silence, their once proud race now reduced to uncertainty. Behind him, Commander Ryan Carter entered. "We've secured the last military bases. The Selvar forces have officially surrendered. It's over." Holloway didn't respond immediately. He had fought for years to bring humanity to this point, but now he saw the cost of war with his own eyes. Millions of Selvar civilians had survived, but their empire was gone. Their fleets were destroyed. Their leaders were either captured or dead. "The war is over," Holloway finally said. "But what happens now?" Carter sighed. "We should leave them. Let them rebuild on their own." "They won't survive," Holloway said. "They depended on their empire's control. Without it, their worlds will collapse. There will be chaos, starvation, civil wars. After what they did to us, does it really matter?" Carter asked. Holloway turned to face him. "We didn't fight this war to destroy. We fought to survive. Now we have a choice. Do we let history repeat itself, or do we do something different?" Carter frowned but nodded. "What do you have in mind?" "A new order." A week later, humanity announced its plan to the galaxy. Instead of ruling over the Selvar as conquerors, they offered something unexpected: a partnership. The Selvar dominion was gone, but in its place, humanity proposed a new system. A council where former Selvar territories could govern themselves, under guidance and protection from Earth. Some Selvar refused, unwilling to accept leadership from the species that defeated them. Others, however, saw the truth. Humanity was not here to destroy them, but to change the future. The galaxy watched in shock. No empire had ever done this before. Conquerors did not offer peace. Victors did not help the defeated rebuild. Yet humanity did. The galaxy reacts. Not everyone was happy. Other alien civilizations, who had feared the Selvar for generations, wanted them punished. They wanted humanity to erase the dominion completely. "The Selvar ruled with cruelty," said the ambassador of the Varith coalition. "They deserve the same treatment." Holloway, speaking before the Galactic Council, responded simply, "Then we would be no better than them." Some alien species saw humanity's actions as weakness. They believed Earth should have taken control of Selvar Prime and ruled as conquerors. They whispered that humans were too merciful, too soft. But others saw something else. They saw that humanity was not just powerful, but wise, strong enough to win wars, but intelligent enough to know when to stop fighting. And in time, they began to respect humanity not as conquerors, but as leaders. Rebuilding the future. Months passed, and the changes became clear. Under human guidance, former Selvar worlds stabilized. New governments formed. Trade routes reopened. Human engineers and scientists helped rebuild destroyed cities. Even former Selvar soldiers, once sworn enemies of Earth, now worked alongside human officers to maintain peace. Some could not accept the new reality, but others saw it as a second chance, a chance to rebuild, to learn, to grow. One young Selvar officer, Varin Talkesh, stood in his new uniform, looking at the human soldiers beside him. A year ago, they had been enemies. Now, they were allies. Strange, isn't it? Carter said, standing next to him. Varen glanced at the human commander. What is? Fighting each other for so long, only to end up here. Varen thought for a moment, then nodded. Maybe this is how it was supposed to end. Carter smirked. No, this is how we chose to end it. A message to the stars. As the first year after the war passed, a message was sent to every corner of the galaxy. It was not a warning. It was not a threat. It was an invitation. Humanity had proven its strength, but now they offered something greater, unity. The message was simple. We are not conquerors. We are not rulers. But we will stand for peace. We will stand for justice. And to those who believe in a better future, you will always find an ally in humanity. Some species listened. Some doubted. Some still feared them. But one thing was clear. Humanity was no longer a forgotten race in the shadows. They were now the architects of a new era, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The war was over. The Selvar Dominion was no more. But the true challenge had just begun. Humanity had won through strength, strategy, and unity. But peace was a different kind of battle, one that required patience, wisdom, and trust. Now they had to prove that they were not just warriors, but leaders. The galaxy was watching. A fragile peace. Fleet Admiral James Holloway stood on the bridge of the UEDF Titan, looking at the vastness of space. The war had ended months ago, but tension still remained. Another skirmish on the Selvar border, reported Commander Ryan Carter. A group of old warlords trying to reclaim power. Holloway sighed. They refuse to accept that the Empire is gone. They refuse to accept us, Carter corrected. They still see humanity as outsiders, as conquerors. Holloway nodded. It was expected. That Selvar had ruled with power for centuries. Now, without an emperor, many factions wanted to take control. Some wanted to rebuild the empire. Others wanted revenge. But humanity would not let that happen. Deploy peacekeeping forces, Holloway ordered. No attacks, no unnecessary fights. We show them that war is over. Carter hesitated, then nodded. Understood, sir. Humanity was not here to dominate. They were here to ensure stability. The Selvar struggle. On Selvar Prime, the streets were no longer filled with fear. Buildings were being rebuilt. Markets were open. People were trying to move forward. But scars of the past remained. Varen Talkesh, a former Selvar officer now working with human forces, saw the looks his people gave him. To many Selvar, he was a traitor, working alongside those who had defeated their empire. Why do you trust them? A young Selvar woman asked him one evening. They are not our kind. They destroyed everything we knew. Varen sighed. No, we destroyed everything. Our leaders thought we were invincible. They refused peace, and because of that, we lost. The woman shook her head. But they are not like us. That is why we need them, Varen said. Because they are different. They see a future we never did. The young woman didn't reply. She simply walked away. Varen knew it would take time for his people to accept this new reality. But he had made his choice, and he knew it was the right one. The Galactic Council meets. The first official meeting of the United Galactic Council was held on a neutral space station, far from any homeworlds. Representatives from many species gathered, some old allies, some former enemies, all curious to see what humanity had planned. When Admiral Holloway and the human delegation arrived, all eyes were on them. A Dreloth ambassador, a species once oppressed by the Selvar, was the first to speak. The galaxy is at a turning point. The old ways have failed. What does humanity propose? Holloway stood. We propose a future not built on fear or domination, but on cooperation. Some scoffed. Some listened. An ambassador from the Varith coalition asked, and if another empire rises? If another war begins, Holloway's eyes hardened. Then we will be ready. Humanity does not seek war, but we will never allow another tyranny to rise unchecked. Murmurs spread through the room. Some saw wisdom in his words. Others saw a warning. But one thing was clear. Humanity was now a force in the galaxy, not to be ignored. A message to Earth. On Earth, celebrations were still ongoing. Humanity had survived its greatest war and emerged stronger. But President Elena Vasquez knew this was only the beginning. As she prepared her speech to the world, she thought of the sacrifices that had been made, the soldiers who had fought, the lives lost, the lessons learned. She stepped forward and spoke to the billions watching. The war has ended, but our journey has just begun. We have proven our strength, but now we must prove our wisdom. The galaxy does not need conquerors. It needs leaders, builders, and protectors. She paused, letting her words settle. From this day forward, humanity will stand for unity, justice, and peace. We will not rule, but we will guide. We will not demand, but we will lead by example. She looked into the camera, her voice firm. And to any who would threaten this peace, we will be ready. The message was clear. Humanity had risen, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The legacy of humanity. As years passed, humanity's influence grew, not through conquest, but through leadership. Former Excelvar worlds flourished under guidance from Earth. Other species, once isolated, joined the new Galactic Council. There were still threats, still dangers. There always would be. But for the first time, the galaxy had something it never had before: hope. And at the center of it all, standing tall among the stars, was humanity. A species that had once been overlooked. A species that had once been underestimated. A species that had changed the course of history forever. The age of humanity had begun.